Hello and welcome to my channel, Vice Rhino here. Today I'm getting into another of Acts 17 apologetics videos, and this one is on why the US is supposedly a Christian nation. So let's go.
People often claim that the United States of America is a Christian nation. This claim may be true or false depending on what they mean. If they mean that the United States is a Christian nation because most of its citizens consider themselves Christians of one sort or another, this would be true. But it's contingently true. If beliefs happen to change in the coming decades, the United States would no longer be a Christian nation in this sense. A more common meaning is that the United States was founded on certain principles that were ultimately derived from Christianity. This is also true, and it's not something that can change.
Now, I will concede at this point that some of the ideas that the US was founded on are also contained within Christianity. But as far as the structure of government goes, the Founding Fathers got that mostly from the ancient Greek democracies.
If the entire population of the United States became atheists tomorrow, it would still be the case that the United States was founded on certain principles that were ultimately derived from Christianity. But there's a deeper sense in which the United States is a Christian nation, a sense in which the United States can only be the United States if it's sustained by Christian teachings and values.
Well, if you want to get technical here, if the country suddenly becomes overrun by Muslims and they decide to implement Sharia but to keep the name of the country the same, it will still be the United States, believe it or not. Side note, your country actually doesn't really have a name. It just has a description, like it's in the continent of North America and it's a bunch of states that are united under one government. So rather than come up with a name, they just called it the United States of America. That would be like if Canada decided to call itself the Unified Provinces of America. Not that this matters at all, I just find it interesting.
This will seem odd to you if you're not a Christian, and perhaps even if you are a Christian, so let me explain. In the Declaration of Independence, the men who would eventually be called the Founding Fathers laid out their reasons for breaking ties with Great Britain. They declared,
"We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness."
Okay, I see where you're going. You know what? You're right. That's exactly how the Bible lays out government in that verse. Wait, I know it. Oh, wait, what? There's no mention of a democratic government set up specifically to see to the safety and happiness of the people? What? All of the governments said to have been ordained by God in the Bible were dictatorships where casual murder was a regular part of the ruler's life? That can't be!
Throughout the rest of the Declaration, they describe the characteristics of a government that tramples on people's God-given rights. A government that undermines liberty or the pursuit of happiness is a tyranny.
Wait, but wasn't that the government that God set up under the kings of Jerusalem? I'm confused. I thought you said the Founding Fathers came up with the governmental system of the U.S. from Christianity. Why is it the complete opposite of any God-ordained government found in the Bible?
The primary goal of the framers of the U.S. Constitution was to prevent the new nation from becoming a tyranny. The point of having three branches of government with a system of checks and balances was to keep any particular group from ever having the power to control the government.
So, to avoid the problem of having monarchs? Like King David?
The division between federal law and state law was meant to keep the federal government from tyrannizing the states. The purpose of the Bill of Rights was to further protect citizens from being tyrannized by the government.
Oh, too bad for Bathsheba and Uriah there was no Bill of Rights under King David.
And to guarantee their ability to rise up if the government ever did become a tyranny. But the Founding Fathers weren't just concerned about a single person becoming a tyrant. A majority of the population can form a tyranny over a minority of the population. Thus, they regularly warned of the tyranny of the one, the tyranny of the few, and the tyranny of the many.
Insert generic Hillary got more votes joke here.
John Adams wrote, "The right of a nation to kill a tyrant, in cases of necessity, can no more be doubted than to hang a robber or kill a flea."
Well, I would say the death penalty for robbery is highly debatable. And as for killing fleas, that's not even close to a good analogy. Sorry, Mr. Adams.
But killing one tyrant only makes way for worse, unless the people have sense, spirit, and honesty enough to establish and support a constitution guarded at all points against the tyranny of the one, the few, and the many.
Again, not really seeing here how anything in the Bible helps with that.
James Madison added, "The accumulation of all powers, legislative, executive, and judiciary, in the same hands, whether of one, a few, or many, and whether hereditary, self-appointed, or elective, may justly be pronounced the very definition of tyranny."
So once again, by that definition, any God-ordained government in the Bible is tyrannical. Glad we could clear that up. Hey, it just occurred to me. When you guys say it was founded on Christian principles, did you really mean that they looked at the Bible as a guide of what not to do? Because that's exactly what you're convincing me of right now.
Since most people today think that democracy is the surest defense against tyranny, we may wonder why there was an emphasis on guarding against the tyranny of the many, or even an elected tyranny. This concern about tyranny arising from democracy goes back thousands of years to the time of Plato.
So the Founding Fathers got their information on how to set up a non-tyrannical democracy from the ancient Greeks. Therefore, Christian nation?
In the Republic, Plato, through his character Socrates, argues that in a democracy, since the people themselves make the laws, they'll use the laws to satisfy their desires, and their desires will become increasingly centered around physical pleasures instead of what's really good for themselves or for society.
Socrates says, "Isn't democracy's insatiable desire for what it defines as the good also what destroys it?" Adimantus replies, "What do you think it defines as the good?" Socrates answers, "Freedom. Surely you'd hear a democratic city say that this is the finest thing it has, so that as a result it is the only city worth living in for someone who is by nature free." "Yes," Adimantus agrees. "You often hear that." Then, continues Socrates, "as I was about to say, doesn't the insatiable desire for freedom and the neglect of other things change this constitution and put it in need of a dictatorship?" "In what way?" asks Adimantus. Socrates responds, "I suppose that when a democratic city, a thirst for freedom, happens to get bad cupbearers for its leaders, so that it gets drunk by drinking more than it should of the unmixed wine of freedom, then, unless the rulers are very pliable and provide plenty of that freedom, they are punished by the city and accused of being accursed oligarchs."
And there you have it again. The Founding Fathers were operating on the advice of Greek philosophers when founding the U.S. Are you going to get to why it's a Christian nation anytime soon?
The Founding Fathers agreed with Socrates that the unchecked pursuit of pleasure would inevitably lead to tyranny. This is one version of what they called the tyranny of the many. But they also understood that if there's something within people that helps regulate and moderate their desires, a democracy can thrive. John Adams wrote,
"We have no government armed with power capable of contending with human passions unbridled by morality and religion. Avarice, ambition, revenge, and licentiousness would break the strongest cords of our Constitution as a whale goes through a net. Our Constitution was made only for a moral and religious people. It is wholly inadequate to the government of any other."
Okay, so one of the Founding Fathers believed that religion was essential to the survival of the government. There were probably a few. That's just the one that you found a quote, right? That doesn't actually make it a Christian nation. And I think it might be good to point out here, too, that while John Adams was a Christian and believed in miracles and the divinity of Jesus and all that, he also believed that parts of the Bible were fallible and that religion needs constant reform in order to gradually move towards perfection. Is that the kind of Christianity you're claiming the U.S. was founded on? Because I could get behind that, mainly because if a religion were to move towards perfection, I'm confident that it would eventually extinguish itself.
The government, according to Adams, simply cannot contend with human passions unbridled by morality and religion. Why? Because our government is a democracy, and people with no self-control will vote for leaders who promise to grant them their heart's desires.
Okay, I think I see where you're actually going with this now. So instead of claiming that they use Christian principles to found your country, your claim is that Christian values amongst the population are what keeps the democracy from falling into tyranny. Is that right? So if so, how is that different from just having a majority Christian country? Like you said earlier in your video that it's different being founded on Christianity and just having the majority of the people being Christian, but now you're coming around and it's all coming back to, oh, well, the majority are Christian, therefore it's a Christian nation.
And this is the path to tyranny. So, the United States can only remain the United States so long as its citizens remain a moral and religious people.
Well, to be fair, he didn't specify which religion.
The path to tyranny therefore begins when people start showing contempt for morality and religion and throw off the values that are grounded in the life and work of Jesus Christ.
Okay, so again, you're saying that this is a Christian country because the majority of the citizens are Christian. That's not what you said at the beginning of the video. And I don't think people are throwing off morality when they ask for freedom from religion. They're simply asking for respect. But instead of respect, you are offering a tyranny of the majority, where the minority of atheists and Muslims are having Christianity shoved at them from every direction whether they want it or not.
In case all of this seems merely theoretical, or in case you're thinking that it's better for society to break ties with religion, I invite you to look around. Don't you see the divisions becoming wider and wider, and groups becoming progressively more hostile to one another?
Yes, and this is a problem, but it's not a religious problem so much as a cultural problem. You don't see this sort of thing in Japan and the Netherlands. If you're interested in solving this problem, a good place to start, I think, would be the book The Righteous Mind by Jonathan Haidt. It's an excellent read, and I think it gives really good insight into the minds of everyone on the political spectrum, left, right, center, you name it.
Schaeffer continues, in such circumstances, it seems that there are only two alternatives in the natural flow of events. First, imposed order, or second, our society once again affirming that base which gave freedom without chaos in the first place, God's revelation in the Bible and His revelation through Jesus Christ.
Please point me to the Bible passage that demonstrates a non-tyrannical government in action. I would love to see that.
So, why is the United States a Christian nation? It's a Christian nation because the alternative is tyranny.
As I explained earlier, forcing Christianity on people who don't want it is by your own definition tyranny, so it looks like it's tyranny either way. I'll take a secular tyranny myself if I have to choose, thank you very much.